In this video, we will review how to complete a check-in process. There will be two parts to this video. Part 1 will be how to check in a patient who has been pre-registered by a pre-registration employee, and Part 2 will be how to check in a patient who has not been pre-registered by a pre-registration employee. The first step is to access the patient in the pre-registered section of the Phreesia dashboard. You are able to find the patient on the dashboard, or you can search their first or last name by typing in as little or as much as you need to. The next step is to then locate the icon under the Pre column. The green check mark indicates that the patient has completed their own pre-interview prior to their appointment. The patient is able to start this process 5 days prior to their appointment. Phreesia will send them an automated text message and email 5 days prior to their appointment, and if that is not completed, they will send another 3 days before their appointment. When the patient completes their pre-registration interview, triangle icons will display next to their name, indicating different information provided. After the information has been transferred into the patient's NextGen chart, the triangles are then cleared. This is how we determine that a patient's been pre-registered prior to their appointment. When the green icon is indicated here, showing the patient has pre-registered themselves, you simply click on the green check mark, making the patient move into the checked-in column. At this time, the patient's encounter in NextGen has been created once moved into the checked-in column. Here, we will double check that the patient's insurance has a green E&B icon indicating active and eligible insurance. If there is any other icon here than the green check mark, this indicates an eligibility issue with the insurance, and then prompts are given by Phreesia. These must be followed to obtain a status of active and eligible. Patient's insurance imports from NextGen from the last billable encounter. Insurance does not import from Phreesia to NextGen. If there are any changes made to the insurance in Phreesia, the same changes will need to be reflected in NextGen. Failure to do this will lead to inaccurate insurance entry, possibly denying the patient's insurance claim. Next, any copay or balance that is due will be collected. Copays are imported by the specialist copay that are given to us by the patient's insurance. To change a copay for any reason, you simply click on the copay amount, edit copay, and you are able to edit the copay amount here. If the copay amount has been changed, the balance will then automatically update to reflect this. To collect the money, you click on the amount under balance, and we see that balances and copays are available here. Balances import from NextGen are displayed in the manner of doctor, location, date of service. Here we have the month, the day, and the year, and the encounter number. You then select the amount, you select the type of payment the patient will be making. If the patient only wishes to pay one balance or partial balance, you simply uncheck mark the balance the patient does not wish to pay. If the patient only wishes to pay partial balance, you are able to split the balance here. You then enter the amount you wish to collect from the patient towards the payment and click Save. You then see that the payment has been split into two partial payments, and we are able to collect the amount that the patient has told us they'd like to pay. You are then able to email a receipt to the patient. Please verify that the email address on file is accurate. You will then confirm the payment, and you are able to open the receipt to print for the patient if need be. Once E&B has been verified and payment has been collected, it is then time to start the autoflow process in NextGen. If you are checking in from the appointment lookup screen, You will find the patient by typing in as little or as much of their first and last name and selecting Find. You will want to ensure the status here is kept. This indicates that the encounter is transferred from Phreesia into NextGen. If you are checking in from the appointment book, you'll want to select the lightning bolt to update your screen to show a strike through and a status of kept as well. Failure to do this will create two encounters. That means that the insurance and copay will be on one encounter, and the charges, diagnosis, and any findings from the physician will be on another encounter in the electronic medical record portion. Cleanup for this and to merge these two together is a cumbersome process, so it's very important that you are refreshing your screen when you come from Phreesia into NextGen. The next step is to right-click Check In. Any alerts that populate here is just telling us that payment was collected from the patient and there is a remaining balance. The first screen in AutoFlow is Chart Details. We'll want to ensure here that the default referring physician is not a doctor of CBP. This needs to be the physician who originally referred them to our practice. If the patient was not referred by another physician, you can simply leave it as no referring or start to free type the word no for referring doctor. Emergency contact can be listed here. This information will be imported from Phreesia into the patient chart by them completing their pre-registration. We need to verify that the patient's first name, last name, phone number, and relation are listed. The COVID consent to treat date box must be filled out. The patient will have already signed this during their pre-interview. The privacy notice dates, patient will sign this also during their pre-registration interview as well. And whoever the patient has listed as their emergency contact should also be on their privacy notice notes, which is the persons that they list to give us permission to speak with about their medical record. Next screen AutoFlow takes us to is the patient demographic screen. The patient's name, address, phone numbers, email, and marital status, race, ethnicity, and preferred language will all transfer from the patient completing their pre-registration interview. What is important is if the patient has a cell phone only, the cell phone must be listed in the home phone field as well, as this is where reminder calls are generated from. An email must be listed. This is not to be left blank. This counts towards MIPS measurements, which are reported to the state of Ohio, and count towards goals that need to be obtained at the end of the year. If the patient does not have an active email address or wish to share, we must type one of the two, none@email.com or declined@email.com. Next is to open the insurance to ensure that the effective date is entered correctly, being the beginning of the year that we are currently in or the actual effective date, making sure that the copay matches what is listed in Phreesia. If this is different, this could cause an automatic statement or refund to be issued to the patient. Next, you will access your insurance card screen. The push pin here indicates that there is an insurance card that has been scanned. You will then click on the insurance card to make sure that the back has been scanned in as well as the front, and you will look at the created date to ensure that this has been scanned at the beginning of the new year or within a calendar year. The next screen AutoFlow takes us to is our privacy screen. This is where the patient's HIPAA information is entered, but this was also displayed on the chart details screen. The next screen is the UDS screen. The only thing we need to pay attention to here is the consent to treat date. The consent to treat date is presented to the patient during their pre-registration interview The date needs to be manually entered, which is what the pre-registration employee would have done for us. If this is left blank, we will need to take additional steps to ensure that the patient has signed this. This is a one-time only form, so if the date is old or without of a year's time frame, that is completely fine. The client defined screen is to indicate if the patient has interest in our quarterly newsletter that is sent out about our CVP Foundation. If a patient does not wish to receive these, you simply just opt the patient out here. If the patient would like to receive these to their home, you can leave this screen blank. This is also something that would have been imported by the pre-registration team. Employer. Employer is not to be left blank. If the patient is retired, unemployed, disabled, or a student, that must be entered here. If the patient needs to change or update the employer, you simply right-click New, type in the employer name, double-click, and select OK. You are able to delete any employer out that is no longer accurate. The AutoFlow screen that is next is provider. There are 4 providers we must make sure we ask the patient. Their primary care provider, an ophthalmologist or optometrist other than CVP physician doctor, a cardiologist, and an endocrinologist. If there is not a PCP or an ophthalmologist or optometrist other than CVP physicians, we must enter no OD or no PCP. If we leave this blank, this indicates to clinic staff that we did not ask these 2 physicians, and then the referring physician may not get a letter to the updated status of their patient, or clinic staff may re-ask this question to the patient. If the effective date here is not within a year, we'll want to make sure we double click on this and update the date here. If the no PCP is not an option or is no longer a reason, we are able to take this out by expiring, patient no longer seeing. So if the patient did not have a PCP and now they do, we can enter this information by right-clicking New. You'll want to first enter the preference name, which will be the type of physician. The flashlight will help you indicate a more accurate physician. So you can type in or as little or as much of the first name as you like. Verify this is the doctor the patient sees, and possibly the address can help identify that doctor as well. The effective date will be the date of entry, and the primary preference name box will need checked. If the patient does not have a cardiologist or an endocrinologist, you may leave this blank. And then finally, we come to our insurance selection screen. If the insurance was previously attached on a last encounter, it will automatically be pushed to the right here. If any changes or the insurance was made inactive, you must make sure you take that insurance off of this screen. And be sure to push the newly active, or make sure the insurance is pushed in a correct order of primary or secondary. It's very important to make sure that insurance is attached correctly on this screen, because then this will also result in delayed of insurance claims or possibly inaccurate bills to the patient. You will then complete your AutoFlow. And then the last step, as our AutoFlow process, you will indicate the patient in a status of reception area. You will right-click on the patient name, workflow status, reception. This then lets the clinic staff know that the patient is done with their check-in process and is ready to be taken back to the clinic. The final step is to then come back into Phreesia, click on the grayed out check mark for marked as processed, and this puts the patient into the process section of Phreesia.